My name is Sarah and I am 29 years old, living in the bustling heart of London. Every day, the city hums with a million stories, and for a long time, mine felt like a quiet struggle against the backdrop of everyone else's vibrant lives. I am a nurse, working long shifts at one of the busiest hospitals in London. My days are a whirlwind of beeping machines, urgent calls, and the constant need to be calm and strong for others. I love my job, truly I do. There is an immense satisfaction in helping people heal, in bringing comfort to families, in being a steady hand when life feels chaotic. But love for a job does not always pay all the bills, and it certainly does not make you immune to exhaustion. My quiet struggle, the one I carried deep inside, was the weight of responsibility. Our parents passed away when I was barely out of college, leaving me and my younger sister, Emily. Emily was only 16 then, and I immediately stepped into the role of her guardian, her provider, her everything. She is 20 now, brilliant and determined, studying at university, and my biggest dream is to see her graduate, to launch her into a life free from the worries that often shadowed ours. But London is an expensive place to live, and university tuition does not magically appear. Every extra shift I picked up, every careful penny I saved, every skipped lunch, it was all for Emily. My own student loans were still a shadow over me, and the thought of Emily finishing her studies debt-free was the fuel that kept me going through those endless 12-hour shifts that often stretched into 14 or 16. My internal nemesis was doubt, a creeping whisper that I was not strong enough, that I would somehow fail Emily, that I would buckle under the pressure and let her down. I worried that I was missing out on my own life, that I was too young to carry so much, but then I would remember Emily's bright smile, her hopeful eyes, and I would push the doubt away, vowing to keep fighting. I truly tried my best to improve our situation. I worked every extra shift I could get my hands on, often back-to-back, sometimes even agency shifts at other hospitals on my days off. My life became a constant cycle of work, sleep, and worry. I cut back on everything that was not absolutely essential. My old car, a tiny hatchback, only came out for grocery runs or emergencies. Otherwise, I walked everywhere, telling myself it was good for my health. My meals often consisted of whatever was cheapest and easiest to grab, or sometimes, no meal at all if I was too tired or wanted to save a few more pounds for Emily's living expenses. I kept a meticulous budget, calculating every single outgoing, trying to make the numbers add up for Emily's next tuition payment, which was rapidly approaching. I even started knitting small hats and scarves in my rare moments of downtime, hoping to sell them online, though I rarely had the energy to do more than a few rows. Just when I thought I was making a tiny bit of headway, a series of setbacks hit me hard. First, there was an unexpected letter from Emily's university. A small grant she had been receiving, one we had counted on, was not being renewed. The tuition fees for the next term would be significantly higher than we had anticipated. My heart sank. It felt like walking uphill in a blizzard, only to find the path suddenly became steeper and longer. Then, the exhaustion really started to take its toll. During one particularly hectic night shift, I almost made a medication error. It was minor, caught in time by a quick-thinking colleague, but it rattled me to my core. I prided myself on my precision and focus, and the thought that my fatigue could put a patient at risk terrified me. I started to question if I was truly capable of juggling everything, if I was becoming a danger instead of a help. I called Emily, trying to sound cheerful, but she sensed my stress. She offered to drop out, to get a full-time job, and help me. The guilt I felt was immense. I told her absolutely not, that her education was paramount, but her offer, made with such love, only added to the weight on my shoulders. I even tried to sell a small, sentimental necklace that had belonged to our mother, something I had sworn I would never part with, but the amount I was offered was a pittance, barely enough for a week's groceries. It felt like another failure. My absolute lowest point came on a Tuesday. I had pulled an exhausting 24-hour shift because another nurse had called in sick, and there was simply no one else. The hospital was understaffed, overwhelmed, and I had been running on fumes for days. I was already drained, mentally and physically, anticipating Emily's tuition deadline at the end of the week. I had been counting on getting paid for this extra long shift to make up the shortfall. Just as I thought I was finally done, the hospital's main patient monitoring system crashed. It was a complete disaster. It meant hours of manual charting, constant checks, and a mandatory extension of my shift until the system was fully restored and all patient data was meticulously updated. This meant another 6 hours unpaid because it was considered an incident response and not billable patient care. I felt my knees buckle, my body ached, my head throbbed, and my eyes burned. The thought of facing another moment, another task, felt utterly impossible. I found myself in an empty supply closet, tears streaming down my face, silently sobbing into my scrubs. I felt utterly, completely broken. It was too much. I could not do it anymore. I thought about just walking away, resigning from my job, letting Emily figure out her own way, finding a quiet corner of London where I could just exist without this crushing pressure. I felt like giving up entirely, succumbing to the doubt that had been my constant companion. When I finally, blessedly, stumbled out of the hospital, the early morning London air felt strangely cold and unwelcoming. My body moved on autopilot as I walked towards the staff car park, each step a monumental effort. My vision was blurry from tears and exhaustion, and my mind was a muddled mess of despair and failure. I just wanted to get home, crawl into bed, and disappear from the world. I reached my old, familiar car, fumbling for my keys, and then I stopped dead. On my bonnet, carefully placed, were 2 large, reusable grocery bags. They were not mine. My heart pounded with a mix of confusion and a flicker of fear. Had someone left them by mistake? Was it a joke? I cautiously looked inside. The bags were filled with healthy food: fresh fruits, vegetables, a carton of organic eggs, a loaf of artisan bread, a small pot of my favorite Greek yogurt, and even a fancy coffee. And nestled among the items was a small, cream-colored envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, in neat, elegant handwriting, was a note. It simply said, "Dear Nurse Sarah, we see your tireless dedication, your unwavering strength, and the countless sacrifices you make every single day. Especially after these last few difficult shifts, we hope this small token helps you recharge. You are a true hero. Thank you." There was no name, no address, just those heartfelt words. The tears started again, but this time they were different. They were not tears of despair, but of profound, overwhelming relief and gratitude. Someone saw me, someone knew, someone cared. It was not just the food, though the thought of a proper, nourishing meal felt like a miracle. It was the simple, beautiful acknowledgement that lifted the crushing weight from my chest. In that moment, surrounded by the mundane hum of the car park, I felt a spark ignite within me. I was not alone. There was kindness in the world, unexpected and pure. This act of kindness from a complete stranger was my turning point. It gave me the strength to take a leap of faith, not in the big, dramatic sense, but in the quiet, profound belief that things would, somehow, be okay. I went home, showered, ate some of the fresh fruit, and then, instead of collapsing, I started to think clearly for the first time in days. I researched hardship funds for university students, something I had been too proud to consider before. I called a trusted colleague, a senior nurse named Margaret, whom I had always admired but kept at a distance. And for the first time, I confided in her about my struggles with Emily's tuition. Margaret listened with a kind, understanding heart. She told me about a little-known bursary program within the hospital for staff facing financial difficulties and helped me with the application. That unexpected act of kindness changed everything. My new normal is still busy, still demanding, but it feels different. The bursary helped immensely with Emily's tuition, easing the immediate pressure. Emily, learning that I had received some help, was deeply moved and insisted on getting a part-time job herself to contribute, not just to her studies, but to our shared household. She is thriving at university, and her newfound independence and determination make my heart swell with pride. I still work incredibly hard, but I now have more balance. I learned that it is okay to ask for help, to lean on others, and most importantly, to be kind to myself. I now actively look for ways to pay that kindness forward. I started a kindness box in our staff room, anonymously filling it with healthy snacks, soothing teas, and comforting notes for my colleagues who are often just as exhausted as I once was. I volunteer at a local community center on my rare days off, helping to organize food drives for families in need. I make an extra effort to check in on new nurses, offering them the support and guidance I once needed so desperately. My own internal nemesis of doubt has been replaced by a quiet confidence, a belief in the power of connection and compassion. Years passed, and life blossomed in ways I could not have imagined. Emily graduated with honors, a bright future ahead of her, and she constantly reminds me how much my sacrifices meant. One evening, after a particularly long shift, I was leaving the hospital when I saw a woman struggling to carry a large bag of groceries towards her car. She looked tired, her shoulders slumped. Instinctively, I walked over and offered to help. As I carefully placed the bag in her car, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with a recognition that startled me. "Sarah," she asked, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "You probably don't remember me, but my mother, Clara, was a patient on your ward many years ago. She had a long, difficult recovery, and you were her primary nurse. You were always there, always so patient and kind, even when she was at her most difficult." My memory clicked. Clara was a lovely, elderly woman who had indeed had a very tough time, and I had spent many hours with her. The woman, Clara's daughter, reached into her own bag and pulled out a familiar cream-colored envelope. "I saw how exhausted you were back then, how you pushed yourself to the limit for everyone. After Mother recovered, I wanted to find a way to thank you, to acknowledge your silent struggles. I hoped that little gesture of food and a note might give you a moment of comfort." My breath caught in my throat. It was her, the woman whose anonymous kindness had pulled me back from the brink. The world truly is a small place, and kindness, I have learned, always finds its way back home, echoing through the lives it touches, creating ripples of hope that extend far beyond what we can ever see.